Hello, Comms 469 students. I'm just going to give you a very short video if any of you are just wanting to double check that you're ready to submit your draft, or if you are just stumped about a certain process of composing your draft. In this video, we're going to talk about the overall process of the next 2 weeks and what process your draft is going to go through. Then I'll talk about your artifact choice, and then I'll talk about how you can get yourself brainstorming and writing sentences to fill in your draft. So your draft target is 750 words because your final version should be 1500. And it's important for you to get it in on time and to complete as much relevant material within it so that it can get reviewed over the subsequent week. And that's why if it's incomplete or late, there needs to be a penalty attached, because your peers need to have time within their schedule to write a memo about your draft that reviews it. And you'll be writing a memo about somebody else's draft. Let's look at our schedule briefly here. We have the 25th is when you're submitting your draft. Then the following week, you submit your memo about somebody else's draft, and they submit their memo about your draft. And in class, we'll take 20 to 30 minutes to do an oral peer review activity where each person will introduce their own draft. You'll have somebody else read aloud a section of the draft, and then you'll get some oral feedback in class from the people who were not designated to write the memo on your draft. So after that activity, pick up your memo from D2L, and you can find out what your peer thought about your draft and any hints they might have for improving it. The next phase is for you to revise it further. Of course, you could still be working on revision even before the peer review day. But if you want to have more feedback from me, you should wait until in-class review happens. Then you could make an appointment, or even in advance if you want to have an appointment. That would be fine, either by Skype or in my office. And my schedule is online, so you can easily send me an email to ask for a time. So it's optional to talk with me further, but you can do that as you're refining your final version, and your final version's due on the 8th. So it's a whole 2 weeks between your draft and your final version. It's a 20% assignment, so that's why it's going through this process of development, because it shouldn't be something that you're putting together the night before it's due on the 8th. You're going through a 2-week process. So that's the overview. And so keep in mind that your 750 words should be something that a reviewer can read and understand. It should be in sentences as much as possible, because when you're writing incomplete sentences in a bullet list, like single words or phrases in a bullet list, those are notes to yourself. It's not a draft. And it's real hard for a reviewer to understand, what do you say on that topic, or what are you going to talk about with that phrase. So your draft content is complete sentences. The grammar doesn't have to be perfect. The style doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need to include all your citations. You don't need to include a reference list. You don't even need a conclusion. But it should be something that's worthy of review so that you can actually use the feedback that you get. What you write in the draft is not written in stone. It's a draft. You can even change your artifact if you decide that you don't like it after submitting your draft. It's just that going through the drafting and the reviewing of it will also give you feedback. Even if you change your topic, it'll help you to think about, oh, well, how do you say things in a clear way for a rhetorical analysis? How do you make sure that enough is a clear enough claim? You know, those kinds of things can apply even if you change your topic or change your artifact. I won't be looking at the quality of your draft in grading it. I'll just be checking whether you completed it on time and whether it actually had the minimum word count of relevant information. The next thing I want to talk about is to make sure you have a good artifact. Hopefully you've already selected that, but just in case. It's Canadian Rhetor, Canadian audience, published within the past 5 years. That means from 2012, January onwards. It should be online without a password. It should be able to be read, listened, or viewed in 5 minutes or less. And so oftentimes you'll need to select part of your artifact. If it's a 10-minute video, then you need to select a natural section within it. And I wouldn't say, oh, I'm just analyzing the first 5 minutes, because maybe at the 5-minute mark something is in the middle of happening. So it might be better to choose a 3-minute segment, or that has a natural boundary around it. So it could be, oh, the segment about blah blah, or after the intro, the first little bit, or just the intro and the first main point or movement in the video. All kinds of artifacts are eligible. You can think about news, you can think about videos, you can think about advertisements. I would just recommend that your artifact includes some words in it. Even if it's an audio file, it's harder to analyze something that's just completely aesthetic, like a piece of artwork. Visual art might be harder to analyze, because then we're getting into using art terminology to analyze it. So our textbooks and our rhetorical analysis, the first few chapters, they really don't give you that much equipment on analyzing purely visual, purely artistic or aesthetic works. So try to choose an artifact that has enough language in it that can undergo rhetorical analysis more easy using the terminology. So keep in mind you need to keep a backup copy. Even if you change your mind later, try to practice downloading it in some way so that you have it stable. They might remove it. This part here on your first page, you might as well fill it in, but it doesn't count in your word count. It can get you revved up and no longer looking at a blank page. And here's the alternative for the opening, and then you'll put your artifact reference under that. And so that'll get you started if you put that in there. You don't have to worry about formatting for your draft. It can look messy. And this part here is what you just need to keep in mind. So now we're looking at the how to get your 750 words of content. How do you brainstorm? And here the basic outline is that you can brainstorm material to put into your rhetorical situation section. You could, if you want, to do some research around your artifact and find some things out about its recent situation, the timing, the creators of the artifact, author or speaker, their bio, whatever's relevant. You could find out some information, but realize that that's not your whole point. That's a very short movement within your whole analysis. You should be focusing a lot of your time on the analysis section itself. Eventually you'll need to cite key concept terms, and this is your sandbox right here. I wanted to limit you to just the chapters that I've assigned to date and put into our readings and the PowerPoint materials that I've supplied. And I recommend just using those materials, either the PowerPoints or the chapters themselves or your notes, using them as a checklist to think about, what do I want to analyze about my artifacts? What inside my artifact is worthy of critiquing or praising? Did it do argument really well? Was it really awful at structure? Is there something with its style that is uniquely effective or ineffective? And so this helps you to brainstorm what are the main points that you could say. You might come up with 8 or 10 different things you want to say about what's good or bad about the artifact, and then you might want to just narrow it down to about 3 or 4 points, because maybe in your analysis body section you might have one paragraph about argument, another paragraph about structure, and then you might want to end with style, or the other way around, right? You might want to just focus all of your analysis on style and avoid the other issues, or just do a structure and a style analysis. So it's really up to you how you work within that framework. but you can think about how any of those key terms makes your artifact more effective or less effective given its audience, etc. Notice that chapter 2 isn't there because the rhetorical situation is not part of your analysis section. It's different. Here we're only looking at stuff that is inside your artifact that makes it successful or not. So as you're drafting, just concluding now, try to let your sentences flow and not correct yourself too much. Try to stay on topic as much as possible. And just imagine that this is going to be a way of getting some useful feedback from your peers over the first week after submitting it. And when you submit it, we're just going to end with this. Make sure you go to the right spot on D2L. You go to your Dropbox. There should be a Dropbox. You might have a different view than me. I have an instructor view, but this is where you put it. Rhetorical Analysis Draft and Review Memo. This is a group Dropbox, and you all have access to what each other submits to the instructor in this Dropbox. And you can find out after you put your draft there whose memo or whose draft you are writing a memo about. And that's just in the tab of our schedule down here. And here's our review groups. So if you are Brittany, then Morgan is reviewing your draft. If you're Brandon down here, you are reviewing the draft by Morgan. And if they don't put it there in time for you to write about it, then you can choose any other draft. Then it's open field day. I'm just giving you the first choice. You'll need to write a memo about somebody's draft within your peer review group by the next week. And that's all you need to know at this point. Happy drafting, and again, don't be too stressed out. It should flow as you're thinking about your situation research and as you are thinking about what's worth talking about within this artifact you've chosen. Talk to you later.